Stephanie, I'm just waiting on Andy to join us.
Okay. Muted. Start the video.
Morning, Miss Taylor. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Very good. I assume that is Ms. Garcia?
Yes,
It
it is.
is.
All right, very good. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We're on the record in 24 CPR 040264 in the estate of Francisco Garcia. Ms. Garcia, if you'd raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you provide here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes.
Very good. Ms. Taylor, you may proceed.
Judge, at this time I call Maria Garcia. Is your name Maria Carolina Garcia?
Yes.
And were you married to Francisco Garcia?
Yes.
And referred to him as Frank, is that correct?
Yes.
And he lived and had a fixed residence in Fort Bend County, Texas, is that correct?
Yes.
Did he pass away on October 17th, 2023
Yes.
in Katy,
Texas.
Texas? Is
Mhm.
that correct?
Yes.
And he was 69 at the time he died. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did he have real estate and other assets that he owned with you?
Yes.
Okay. And did he leave a will dated August 2nd, 2022?
Yes.
And did we give the original to the judge when we filed the petition to probate the will?
Yes.
And the judge is going to show you the screen.
Yes.
And is that the will that we're talking about?
Yes.
And on page 5, is that his signature?
Yes.
And you believe that that will is still a valid will, that it was not revoked?
Yes.
Okay. And is there a reason that we need to administer this estate, meaning we need to put things in your name, etc.?
Yes.
Okay. And after the date of the will, did he have any kids?
No.
Okay. And did he ever get divorced
No.
from you? No. Did it name you as the independent executrix to serve independently without bond?
Yes.
And you are eligible in all ways to serve as that executrix.
Yes.
And you will follow the law and take care of filing the inventory, etc. Is that correct?
Yes.
And there were no state, government, or charitable organizations named in his will, just family. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And are you asking the court then to waive the appraisers
Yes.
because it's a non-taxable estate, and to grant you letters testamentary so that you can act as the independent executor of this estate?
Yes.
I pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, the court heard the testimony of Maria Carolina Garcia. She testified as to the proof of death, validity of the will, and other facts. The court will admit the will and the probate and appoint Ms. Garcia as independent executrix to serve without bond, and appraisers will be waived. Ms. Garcia, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Ms. Taylor, everything will be signed shortly. Y'all have a great day.
Okay, we'll get the other paperwork on file, Your Honor.
Very good.
Thank you. May we be excused?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Mr. Brooks, if you would please start your video. Mr. Brooks, I have sent you a request to start your video. If you'd please check the button. Mr. Ditta,
Yes, Your Honor.
we would like to call your client. See, he might be having some technical difficulties.
Do that right now.
Tell you what, while we work through these difficulties, I'm going to go to the next case. I'll come right back to you. Mr. Humble, is your client with you? You're muted, sir.
All right, clicked it. Yes, Your Honor.
There we go. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're on the record in 23 CPR 040186 in the estate of Thomas D. Larvin. Ms. Larvin, if you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you provide here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes.
Very good. All right, Counselor, you may take it from here.
All right, may it please the court. Ms. Larvin, please state your full name and address for the court.
Yes, Linda Larvin, 21823 Moortown Circle, Katy, Texas, 77450.
Thank you. And were you well acquainted with the decedent Thomas Larvin during his lifetime
Yes,
and your relationship with him?
I'm his wife.
All right. And did Mr. Larvin die on October 11th, 2023 in Fort Bend County, Texas at the age of 74?
Yes,
Okay. Was the date of his death less than 4 years ago?
I tested the speaker and it said it was okay.
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead. Continue.
Was the date of his death less than 4 years ago?
yes,
Okay. And was he domiciled in and a resident of Fort Bend County at the time of his death?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, can we show the purported original will on the screen?
I'll go ahead and put it on the screen for you. 1 second.
Okay, so we'll now show you a document dated September 3rd, 1985, which purports to be Mr. Larvin's last will and testament. Can you identify this as such? And at the end, could you recognize the signature?
I do.
Okay. And do we have the original, the codicil, the first codicil?
We do, but let me get to the very end of this will.
Oh, all right,
his
okay.
Signature. He signed every page, but let me get to the very last page. There we go.
And you recognize the signature?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's your codicil.
Okay, and now I'll show you a document dated January 5th, 2009, which purports to be the first and only codicil to Mr. Larvin's last will and testament. And then can you identify this as such? And do you recognize the signature on this document?
Yes.
Thank you. And then to the best of your knowledge, did Mr. Larvin ever revoke the original will or the first codicil?
No.
Okay. There is a necessity for the administration of this estate, correct?
Yes.
Okay, after the date of the codicil to the will, which is January 5th, 2009, were any children born or adopted to by Mr. Larvin?
No.
Are you one of the beneficiaries of the estate?
Yes.
Okay, was Mr. Larvin married at the time of his death?
Yes.
Okay. Does the will name the state of Texas, a government agency of the state of Texas, or any charitable organization as a beneficiary?
No.
Okay, and the will appoints you as independent executor, correct?
Yes.
As far as you know, are you qualified, not disqualified, to serve as independent executor and accept letters testamentary?
Yes.
Your Honor, it's a non-taxable state and there's no necessity for appraisers. We ask that appraisers be waived and no bond be required.
All right, the court heard the testimony of Linda Larvin. She testified as to the proof of death, validity of the will, and other facts. The court will admit the will in a probate and appoint the will and one single codicil as well, I should say, into probate. And will appoint Ms. Larvin as independent executrix to serve without bond, and appraisers will be waived. Ms. Larvin, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
All right, Counselor, your order will be signed shortly.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, y'all have a great day.
You as well. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ditta, I think we are all connected and ready to move forward.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, we're on the record in 23 CPR 040215 in the estate of Sheila Faye Brooks. All those who intend to testify, if you would raise your right hand to be sworn by the court. Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony provided here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. And if you'd unmute yourself when you respond, please. You'll each have to unmute yourself to respond.
I do.
I do.
Very good. All right, you may put your hand down. Mr. Ditt, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, Louis Ditta, I represent the applicant Ronald Brooks for the probate of his wife's last will. I'd like to first call one of the subscribing witnesses to the will, Mr. James Matthew Reed. Mr. Reed, would you state your name, please?
James Matthew Reed.
Mr. Reed, you knew the decedent Sheila Faye Brooks, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you have seen a copy of Miss Brooks' last will, and the judge has the will on the screen, and it's dated October 20 of 1989. Do you recognize that as Miss Brooks' last will?
I do.
You were present when Miss Brooks signed this will, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you signed, that's your signature on the first witness line, is that correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Reed, I know it's been approximately 34 years ago, but to the best of your recollection, was the other witness to the will, Sue Ann Colerick, also present when you and Miss Brooks signed the will?
That's correct.
And you and Miss Colerick were over the age of 14 at the time you signed as witnesses, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. There's a page after this page, Your Honor, if you wouldn't mind going to that page. Thank you. In this page, it bears, Mr. Reed, your signature, Ms. Collerick's signature, and the signature of the notary. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And was the notary also present when the will was signed?
That's correct.
And who is the notary? Your Honor, if you could go down just one more space.
Her name is Donna F. Minchisi.
Is that someone that you knew?
I did.
Okay. And she was, the notary is also over the age of 14 when the will was signed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Mr. Reed, on October 20th, 1989, when this will was signed, Ms. Brooks was of sound mind and over the age of 18. Is that correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, nothing further for this witness.
You may call your next witness.
Call Mr. Ronald Brooks. Mr. Brooks, would you state your name, please?
Ronald Brooks.
And Mr. Brooks, your wife, Sheila Faye Brooks, passed away on November the 11th, 2023 at the age of 71. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
At the time of your wife's passing, she was a resident of Fort Bend County, Texas. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you filed your wife's October 20, 1989 will that was on the screen. Do you recognize that as your wife's last will?
Yes, I do.
And to the best of your knowledge, Mr. Brooks, your wife never did revoke this will. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there was one child born to you and your wife after the date of the will. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And there's no dissolution of a marriage of your wife after the date of the will. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the will names you as independent executor without bond to serve on behalf of your wife's estate. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And there's no reason why you would be disqualified from serving as independent executor. Is that correct?
Yes, it.
And there is a necessity for the administration of your wife's estate. Is that correct?
Yes.
And there's not a gift to a charitable organization, the state of Texas, or an agency of the state of Texas under the will. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, nothing further for this witness. This is a non-taxable estate, and ask that you waive appraisers and admit the will to probate and appoint Mr. Brooks as independent executor without bond.
All right, the court heard the testimony of Ronald Warren Brooks and James Reed. They both testified as to the proof of death, validity of the will, and other facts. The court will admit the will to probate and appoint Mr. Ronald Warren Brooks as independent executor to serve without bond, and appraisers will be waived in this matter as well. Mr. Brooks, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And
Thank
Mr.
you,
Reed, thank you for coming in and helping to testify and prove up this will.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Dida, everything will be signed shortly.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Are we ready to go, Judge?
Well, is your client with you?
Oh, yes, they are.
Hi, Judge.
Hello. And then are the witnesses with you by chance as well?
Yes, there you
Yes,
are.
sir. I'm right here.
Okay,
Right here.
very good. All right, now we can get started. Mr. Franks, are you there?
Yes, Judge, my video hasn't kicked on just yet, but it's giving me the hourglass, so it should be along here shortly.
Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and get started. We're on the record in 23 CPR 039084, estate of Byron C. Cernock, aka Byron Charles Cernock. All those who intend to testify, if you would raise your right hand to be sworn by the court. Each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony provided here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Very good. All right, Mr. Schwartz, I tell you what, let's start with the airship. We'll prove up that, and then we'll move into the administration.
All right. Yeah. State your name, please.
Sheila C. Schifferly.
And Ms. Schifferly, you have asked me to file an application for administration and airship and on Byron Chernock. And can you tell me who he is and what the date of his death?
Byron is my father, and he died on February 13th, 2023.
All right. And he was your father, and he was married to Sandra when he passed away. Is that right?
Correct.
And that's your mother, correct?
Yes. That is
And he was married only one time. Is that right?
Yes.
And with that marriage, there was 3 children. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's you, and you have 2 brothers,
Yes.
Dwayne and Brandon, right?
Yes.
And they're still living. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Sandra's still living, right?
Yes.
And he passed away on February 13th, 2023. He was a resident of Fort Bend County, correct?
Correct.
All right, Your Honor. We would also ask you to take judicial notice of the fact that there's the other 2 children and the wife and Sandra have all signed consents for this application to be filed, as well as the application for administration.
The court shall take judicial notice.
All right, thank you. Pass the witness.
Mr. Franks.
Good morning. How are you doing? We spoke earlier, and I just wanted to follow up with just a few minor questions. And that is, there were no children that were adopted by your father. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he never took any children in, as far as you know, in relation to caring for them or otherwise treating for them as his own. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And about how long was your father? Your father was married for a long time, but goes back to roughly what year?
1969.
Very well. And he had no marriages prior to that. Is that correct? Prior to your mother?
That's correct.
Thank you. No further questions, Judge.
All right, Your
Schwartz,
Honor.
you can call your next witness.
I'll
Call
call
your
the
next
next witness. Have a seat. You can sit down.
Okay.
Would you state your name, please?
Sandra Ann Chernock.
And you're even though the deceased wife is Sandra Jane, but you're Sandra Ann. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how long had you known Sandra?
Byron.
And Byron?
Yeah, Byron since 1974, about 50 years.
50 years. And so did you know him before? You've known him for 50 years, right?
Yes, sir.
And you knew that he was a resident of Fort Bend County,
Yes.
that he married Sandra, and Sandra is the other Sandra,
Yes.
and that he had 3 children. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And that's Sheila, Dwayne, and Brandon, right?
Yes.
All right, Your Honor. And he did not adopt any other children. Is that right?
Not that I'm aware of.
He was only married once, and that was to Sandra, other Sandra.
Yeah.
And it didn't take any children in for as a.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Pass the witness.
What was
Pardon
that
me?
last response for the record?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Franks.
Judge, given the examination of this witness, I don't have any other questions for this particular witness.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Schwartz.
Yes, okay. And would you state your name, please?
Edward G. Chernock.
All right. And then how did you know Byron Chernock?
I was his uncle.
So you've known him since the date of his birth, then,
Yes,
is that
yes,
right?
I know all his life, my life. Well, his life.
Right. And you heard the testimony of your niece and your wife, is that correct?
That's correct.
And your testimony would be the same, is that correct?
Yes.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Franks.
Judge, no additional questions for this witness, given the examination by counsel.
All right, good. Anything further for the airship then, Mr. Schwartz?
No, have no other evidence, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Franks, are you?
Your Honor, I'm sorry. Your Honor, I met with both telephonically the applicant and both witnesses who identified themselves. I filed my report. Both of these witnesses knew the deceased for a long period of time. I've looked at the records provided by Mr. Schwartz's office and done some additional research and background. There were no prior marriages, and so there were no other children that were born or adopted during the marriage or to the deceased. And he only had those children listed and identified in the application. So under the circumstances, Your Honor, there was no additional information that I had come across that would draw a different conclusion than what Mr. Schwartz has submitted to the court at this time.
Okay. All right, then after listening to testimony of Sheila Christine Schifferly, Edward Chernock, Sandra Chernock, the court finds by clear and convincing evidence these errors are those listed in the judgment declaring airship. I'm going to discharge Mr. Franks from his duties as attorney ad litem. And I see that you have a fee in the matter of $525. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Submitted that fee application. Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And I'll award you a fee in the amount of $525. Mr. Franks, you're free to go. Thank you. Mr.
Thank you. It's a
Schwartz,
pleasure to serve.
Thank you. Mr. Schwartz, if you would go ahead and call Ms. Schifferly to prove up the administration.
Yes, I will. Okay, you're Sheila Schifferly. You've already testified in the airship proceeding, correct?
Correct.
And so you're the daughter of the deceased, Byron.
Correct.
And he passed away on February 13, 2023. Is that correct?
Correct.
And he was domiciled and resident of Fort Bend County. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there was some property that he owned, and there's some that he owned outright with your mother, and then he's got an interest in his grandfather's estate. Is that correct? I mean, his father's estate.
Correct.
And that property is going to be sold. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's the reason why that's the reason why we filed an application for administration, so that you could follow. You're also the executor in your grandfather's estate, right?
Correct.
And he was married only once, and that was to Sandra Jane. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there was 3 children born. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's you and Dwayne and Brandon, and they have both signed consent for you to be the administrator. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you're asking the court to appoint you the independent administrator. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And because he died without a will, right?
Correct.
And you've looked for one, couldn't find one.
Could not find one.
And he did not receive any Medicaid benefits on or after March 1, 2005. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you have never been convicted of a felony. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you know of no reason why you should not be appointed administrator. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're asking that you be appointed administrator without bond and without the necessities of appraisers. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Nobody's filed a contest to this application.
No,
Is
they
that
have
correct?
not. Correct.
All right. You're past the witness. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. After listening to testimony of Sheila Schifferly, the court finds the decedent died intestate, and there's a necessity for administration. The court will grant the request the applicant appoint Ms. Schifferly as independent administrator of the estate. Sheila, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Schwartz, everything will be signed very shortly.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You bet. Bye.
Morning, Judge.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Keaton, if you would turn your video on, please. All right. We're on the record in 23 CPR 039999, estate of James Michael Sparkman. All those who intend to testify, if you would raise your right hand to be sworn by the court. Each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you provide here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, very good. Ms. Serafini, let's start with the air shift, and then we'll move into the administration after that.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to call Paul Keaton. Paul, can you please state your name for the court?
He's muted.
Yeah, you're gonna have to unmute yourself, Mr. Keaton.
Sorry. Paul Keaton.
Very good. And how were you acquainted with the decedent James Michael Sparkman?
We were cousins
And how long did you know him?
all of my life since 1954.
Okay, and did you spend a lot of time together?
Yes, off and on, as cousins do. Yes.
And did you tell me you had played golf together? You saw each other on holidays, family reunions, parties, things like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. And did you have conversations with James about his family?
Yes.
And do you feel you're familiar enough with James and his personal and family relationships to testify today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was James married during his lifetime?
Yes.
To who was he married?
Jody Sparkman.
And did Jody predecease James?
Yes, she did.
And did James ever remarry after Jody's death?
No.
Do you think that's something you would have known?
Yes.
And was James cohabitating with anybody at the time of his death who can claim to be a common law spouse?
No.
Do you think that's something you would have known?
Yes.
Did James have any children?
Yes.
How many and what were their names?
He had 2 children, Kyra and Brent.
And both those children are adults and still alive, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did James ever give a child up for adoption?
No.
Do you think that's something you would have known?
Yes.
And did you tell me that there was a young male in his teens during his high school years that came to live with the Sparkmans on and off periodically as needed because he was having trouble at his home?
Yes.
And do you remember that young man's name?
I do not.
And James never intended to adopt that young man, correct? He was just a mentor to him, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And was James ever in the armed services?
No.
Do you have an interest in the estate?
No.
Are you being paid for today's testimony?
No.
I pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Novy.
Thank you, Judge. Paul, do you recall that I had sent you a questionnaire to fill out quite a while back?
Yes, sir.
And all those answers that you had handwritten, none of that information has changed since that time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Just a other couple quick questions. So it would be your testimony that Mr. Sparkman never took any child or children into his home and considered them to be his own children, even though they were not his biological children.
That is correct. They did. He did not.
All right. Do you know if there was a search for a will?
Yes, as far as I know, there was a search for a will and no one could come up with one.
Okay. And so it'd be your final testimony that The only heirs that James Michael Sparkman had were his two children. And their names are Kyra and Brent. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Judge, I pass this witness.
Ms. Serafini, call your next witness.
Scott Jimerson. Scott, please state your name for the court.
You're muted.
Yeah, Mr. Jimerson, just unmute yourself. There we go.
Scott Jimerson
And how are you acquainted with the decedent?
is a friend of mine.
How many years did you know him?
About 43 years.
And did you also work together for about 10 of those
Yeah.
years? And did you spend your days working together in the same office and you often had lunch together every day?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have conversations with James about his personal and family history?
Yes.
And do you think you're familiar enough with James's personal and family relationships to testify today?
Yes.
Was James married during his lifetime?
Yes, he was.
And who was he married to?
Jody Sparkman.
And Jody predeceased James, correct?
Yes.
Did James ever remarry after Jody's passing?
No.
Was he cohabitating with anyone at the time of his death that can claim to be a common law spouse?
No.
Do you think that's something you would have known?
Yes.
And how many children did James have?
2.
And what are their names?
Kira and Brent.
And they're both still alive and both adults, correct?
Yes.
Did he ever give a child up for adoption?
No.
Do you think that's something you would have known?
Yes.
And you also told me that there was a young man in his teens during his high school years that would often come live with the Sparkmans periodically as needed because he was having trouble at home with his parents, correct?
Correct.
And James never intended to adopt that young man, correct? He was just more of a mentor to him?
Yes.
Okay. And did James ever serve in the armed services?
No.
Do you have an interest in the estate?
No.
Are you being paid for today's testimony?
No.
That's all I have. I pass the witness, Your Honor.
Genovi.
Thank you, Judge. Scott, do you recall that I had sent you a questionnaire to complete and send back to me?
Yes.
Okay. And again, none of those answers that you have written down have changed since the time that you sent that information back to me. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. Again, James never took any children into his home that he would have considered his own child, even though they were not his biological children. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And again, do you know if there was a will that was found?
No.
Okay. And again, it would be your testimony that the only heirs that James Michael Sparkman had were his two children. Is it Kira or Kyra? I'm sorry.
I say Kira.
Okay. And Brent, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And again, you're not receiving any compensation for your testimony today. Not even a $1 gift card to Jack in the Box. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, Judge, that's all I have of this witness.
Ms. Serafini, any further witnesses for the airship?
That's all I have, Your Honor.
All right, after listening to testimony of Paul Keaton and Scott Jimerson, the court finds by clear and convincing evidence that the decedent's heirs are those listed in the judgment declaring heirship. Mr. Novi, I'm going to discharge you from your duties as attorney ad litem in this matter and award you a fee in the amount of $525.
Thank you, Judge.
You are free to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Ms. Serafini, you may proceed with your administration.
Okay, I'd like to call Kira Sparkman. Kira, can you please state your name for the court?
Kira Sparkman.
Are you also Kira Michelle Sparkman?
Yes, Kira Michelle Sparkman,
Okay,
sorry.
That's okay. How are you related to the decedent James Michael Sparkman?
He's my dad.
And he died on August 31st, 2023 at Sugar Land, Fort Bend County, Texas at the age of 76. Is that correct?
Correct.
And 4 years have not passed since the day of his passing, correct?
correct.
And at the time of his death, he was domiciled and had a fixed place of residence in Fort Bend County, Texas, correct?
Correct.
And to the best of your knowledge, he died without a will. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you use reasonable diligence in searching for a will?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you please tell the court all the areas that you did search?
We searched his home. I went to the bank to see if there was a safety deposit box. I contacted the attorney who did the will for my mother, who had a will when she passed away. We searched his office, at his work. I mean, we looked through everything we can think of.
And did you also say that there was no safety deposit box at the bank?
Yes, ma'am. There was no safety deposit box.
And you checked the Fort Bend County clerk's records and there was none
Yes,
on file?
ma'am.
Okay. And there is a necessity that exists for the administration of the estate, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And he had never been divorced, but he was married previously to Jody and she predeceased him, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and all the distributees agree on having you appointed as the independent administratrix, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And to the best of your knowledge, you are not disqualified, but you are qualified by law for accepting letters of administration and serving as the administratrix, correct?
Correct.
And you live in the state of Texas.
Correct.
You've not been declared incapacitated.
No, ma'am.
And you're not a felon, correct?
No, ma'am.
Your Honor, so this is a non-taxable estate. We ask that you waive bond and appraisers and appoint Kira Michelle Sparkman as the independent administratrix.
And after listening to testimony of Kira Michelle Sparkman, the court finds that the decedent died intestate and there's a necessity for administration. The court will grant the request the applicant appoint Kira Michelle Sparkman as independent administrator of the estate. Sparkman, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Jimerson, thank you all so much for coming and testifying today to help us bring this to a conclusion. All right, Ms. Serafini, everything will be signed very shortly. Y'all are free to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right, I think everybody is connected. Let's go ahead and get started. We're on the record in 23 CPR 039978, guardianship of Varen Kataria. All those who intend to testify, if you would raise your right hand to be sworn by the court. Each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony provided here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Dunham, why don't you get us started?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would call Deepak Kataria. Mr. Kataria, would you state your name for the court?
My name is Deepak, last name Kataria.
Very good. You are the father of Varen Kataria, is that correct?
Yes, I am a father of Harin Kataria.
And we're here today on your application to be appointed as his guardian along with your wife, is that correct?
Yes, correct. It is correct.
And at this time, your son is 18 years old, is that right?
Yeah, it is 18 years, and this July he will become a 19. Yes, now 18.
Okay. Very good. I'd like to ask you a few questions about Varen's family. Varen is not married, is that correct?
No, he's not.
And he has no children, correct?
No, no children.
Okay, and you and your wife, Himlata Kataria, are his parents, is that right?
Yes, we both are parents.
Okay, and he has one adult sibling, and that's his brother, Segar Kataria, is that correct?
Yeah,
Sagar.
we have our elder son, Sagar Kataria.
Sagar, okay, sorry about that. And Sagar has been given notice of this guardian proceeding, and he has signed a waiver of notice and agrees to let you and your wife serve as Varen's co-guardians. Is that right?
It is correct.
Okay, very good. Your Honor, I'd ask the court to take judicial notice of the waiver of Sagar Kataria on file with the court.
The court shall take judicial notice.
Thank you, Your Honor. Deepak, I'd like to ask you a few questions about Varen's condition. He was examined by Dr. Manjula Raguthu, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Dr. Raguthu had prepared a certificate based on the examination that certified that Varen was incapacitated, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and we filed that with the court, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. And I can't remember, Your Honor, if I need to offer that into evidence or ask you to take judicial notice or how.
I'll take judicial notice.
Okay, perfect. Can you just tell the court, well, first, Dr. Raguthu had diagnosed Varen with severe autism, is that correct?
Yes, autism.
Okay. And I'd like to ask you a few things about about the nature of Varen's incapacity and some things that he has trouble with. Is he able to handle business matters or financial matters based on his condition?
No, he cannot handle.
Okay. Is he able to drive?
No, he never drove.
Okay. Is Varen currently taking any medications?
Not any particularly medication, just regular
Allergy.
allergy. Only one medication, which is allergy over the counter.
Okay, very good. If he were to be prescribed medications, would he be able to take those at the right time and handle them himself, or would you have to help with that?
No, he will not. We have to, some adult, we have to support him.
Okay, very good. If he were to have to make medical decisions for himself, would he understand that, or would you need help with that?
Yeah, we need to help him.
Okay, very good. Is he able to care for himself on a daily basis, like feed himself, groom himself, that sort of thing?
Yeah, he can do that, but still we have to observe and make sure he doesn't mess anything. But all other activity he does himself, yeah, mom, you can tell.
Okay, very good. In Dr. Raguthu's report, he had concluded that Varen is totally incapacitated. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then living with Varen as his parent for 18 years, do you think that's a correct conclusion that he is totally incapacitated?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And I apologize, Aaron, I should have done this a long time ago. I'd ask Mr. Moore if he's willing to waive Varen's appearance here today.
Absolutely, Your Honor.
Okay.
And all right, the ward's presence is waived.
Okay, I do apologize. I should have done that earlier, Your Honor. So based on Dr. Raguthu's report and again, your lifetime living with Varen, are you asking the court to be appointed as guardian of the person of Varen?
Yes, we request court to give us a guardianship.
Okay, let me ask you one more question. If we were to prepare a legal document for him, say a power of attorney, and present that to him and say, you know, can you sign this to have your parents? Would he understand what that was or what that meant?
No, he doesn't.
Okay, so it's your belief that there's nothing less restrictive than the guardianship that will allow you to care for and advocate for him and care for him as you have throughout his life. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, very good. I'll pass the witness at this time, Your Honor.
Moore.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm Carl Moore. I'm the attorney ad litem for the proposed ward. Mr. Kataria, do you recall that I came to your home on December the 8th to visit you?
Yeah, I recall. I can recognize you. Yes, sir.
Oh, hard to miss. And your son was there and your wife was there. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, we all three were together. Yes.
And Mr. Kataria, you told me that your son is attending Clements High School.
Yes, he is attending Clement High School.
And is he there this morning?
Yes.
Yes.
Your attorney has asked you about the physician certificate of medical examination. Have you read that, sir?
Yes, we read that.
And do you agree with Dr. Raguthu's diagnosis and opinions?
Yes, we agree with Dr. Raguthu's.
And the doctor concluded that your son has autism?
Yes, he
Yes.
did.
and that he's totally incapacitated?
Yes,
And also, sir, you told me that you were an engineer and that you work from home. Is that correct?
yes, correct.
And that you also told me that someone is always in the home with the proposed ward. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, always. Yes.
You never leave him alone.
No, never.
And last, sir, if the court grants this application for guardianship of the person, will you agree to abide by the court's orders?
Yes, we agree.
And do you understand that part of that responsibility is to prepare a report of the ward each year? Do you understand that?
Yes,
Mhm.
understand that.
And Mr. Dunham is going to help you with those items, and you'll listen to him?
Yes. Yeah,
Well-
he's our attorney, family lawyer. Yep.
That's all I have for this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Dunham, you can call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would call Himlada Kataria. Himlada, would you state your name for the court?
Yes.
Yeah. What's your name? Could you?
Hemlata is the first name, last name is a Kataria.
Himlada. Okay. Thank you. And you heard the questions that I asked your husband, Deepak, here today, correct?
Yes, I heard all.
Okay. Do you agree with his testimony concerning Varen's family and his level of incapacity?
Yes, yes, I do.
Okay. And you agree with him that there is a need for him to have a guardian appointed for him to care for him and make decisions for him?
Yes.
Let me ask you one thing I forgot to ask your husband, but you can help us with. Varen does not have any property of his own, correct? So we don't need a guardian for his estate. It's just for his person. Is that correct?
Yes, no property.
Okay, very good. And you're asking the court, along with your husband, to be appointed as the co-guardian for the person of your son, Varen Kataria. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'll pass the witness at this time, Aaron.
More.
Thank you. Ms. Kataria, you remember meeting with me back in?
Yes, yes,
You told me that you are a pharmacist,
yes, correct.
and so do you work during the day?
I work 9 to 5, yes, Monday to Friday.
And as your husband said, is there always someone at the home caring for your son?
Yes, always, always.
And I asked your husband this, if the judge grants this application, do you agree that you will abide by the orders of this court?
Yes,
And you understand you're going to have to file an annual report for your son?
yes,
And Mr. Dunham can help you with that?
yes.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Anything further, Mr. Dunham?
No, Your Honor. I just, based on testimony, would ask that Deepak and Hemlata Kataria be appointed as co-guardians of the person, and based on relationship, we'd ask the bond be set in as low amount as possible.
All right, after listening to testimony, the court finds by clear and convincing evidence that Varen Kataria is totally incapacitated, in need of a guardian with full authority over the person. The court finds that guardianship is warranted, appoints Deepak Kataria and Himlata Kataria as guardian of the person of the proposed ward. Bond is set at $50 each. I'm going to discharge Mr. Moore as attorney ad litem and award him a fee in the amount of $873. Is that agreed to?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
Very good. All right, Mr. Moore, you're free to go. Thank you so much for your assistance today.
Thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Kataria.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dunham has already gone over this with you probably and explained all of this to you about the report that's going to be due every year, but I just want to remind you about it. You can find a copy or the actual report itself the template that you will utilize on the court's website. I'm sure Mr. Dunham's probably already given you a copy of that as well. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Mr. Dunham or you can contact the court as well.
Okay. Sure, sir.
Very good. Thank y'all, and y'all are free to go.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Is Tanya Harvey with DFPS?
Judge, she may be. I know that
Or
Mr.
Adult
Porter
Protect
is
Services.
retiring.
Because I've got Kirk, I've got Miriam Anderson as a caseworker, I got Brittany Cope for Libby King, and then I've got this other attorney, Tanya Harvey, in the waiting room.
I don't recognize that name, but let me go through my emails.
Let's just admit them all and find out. Miss Harvey, if you'd unmute yourself. Miss Harvey,
Yes, sir.
what case are you here on?
I am here for the Tolliver successor guardianship. I'm the attorney for the Health and Human Services.
Perfect. Okay. All right, Miss Anderson, can you hear us? I don't know if your audio is connected. It is not. Let's give Miss Anderson a minute to connect her audio.
Are you here?
Nope, we've lost her.
Hi.
All right, let's see if we can get her back on.
I'm in the hearing.
Miss Anderson, can you hear me now? You'd unmute yourself. All right, can you hear me? I cannot hear you. Can anybody hear Miss Anderson?
No.
Still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Let's go ahead and get started. We're on the record in 20 CPR 034759, guardianship of Kimberly Tolliver. All those who intend to testify, raise your right hand to be sworn by the court. Each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you provide here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right. We're here on an application to appoint a successor guardian in this matter. Well, I tell you what, Ms. Cope, I believe you're filling in for Ms. King, so why don't you proceed?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would call Kirk Monroe. Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Monroe, does the proposed ward, or not proposed ward, she is a ward, does the ward live at 819 Aqua Vista Lane in Rosenberg?
That is correct.
Okay. And Texas Health and Human Services, as you know, is resigning as guardian in this matter, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you represent Brazos Bend Guardianship Services, is that right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and you have applied to be successor guardian of Kimberly Tolliver, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and is Brazos Bend Guardianship Services disqualified for any reason from serving as the guardian of her person?
No.
Okay. And can you just say for the record the relationship between Brazos Bend Guardianship Services and Health and Human Services?
Sure. So Brazos Bend Guardianship Services, we have a contract with Texas Health and Human Services Office of Guardianship. And under that contract, we can only be appointed as successor guardians. So so usually HHSC, they are the initial guardian.
Okay. And in this case, was Texas Health and Human Services appointed Kimberly Tolliver's guardian on March 23rd, 2022?
Yes.
Okay, and that guardian was appointed by this court, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so in the course of how y'all do these cases, the standard practice is for y'all to then step in as successor guardian, which is what you're doing here, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And as far as you know, is the ward still incapacitated to the same degree she was when the guardianship was granted initially?
Yes, as far as I know. Mhm.
And so there is a continued need for the guardianship of her person?
Yes.
And are you asking this court to appoint Brazos Bend Guardianship Services as Kimberly Tolliver's successor guardian?
Yes, I am.
Okay, with all of the same full powers that were awarded in the initial guardianship order?
Yes.
Ask the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Harvey, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
I have no questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Any other witnesses that you'd like to call, Ms. Cope?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Harvey, do you have any witnesses you'd like to call?
I'll call Miriam Anderson, Your Honor.
Perfect. Proceed.
Would you please state your name for the record, Ms. Anderson?
Miriam Anderson,
And how are you employed?
Texas Department of Health and Human Services Guardianship Specialist.
Okay, and are you the guardianship specialist assigned to the Tolliver case?
Yes, I am.
And has the Health and Human Services Commission filed an application to resign for Ms. Tolliver?
Yes, we have.
Okay, and is that because there's going to be a successor guardian appointed?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and is the HHSC resignation conditioned upon qualification of the successor guardian?
Yes.
Okay, and that as a contractor, the Health and Human Services Commission will monitor the successor guardian on a yearly basis. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so are you asking the court today to grant the resignation of the Health and Human Services Commission?
Yes.
And will you be filing a final report and ask to be discharged in that report?
Yes.
And you'll ask to be discharged because there is no property remaining in the hands of the guardian. Is that correct?
Correct.
And will you be filing that today?
Yes.
Okay, I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. Anything further for this successor guardianship appointment, Ms. Cope?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Harvey, anything further?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. The court finds that a successor guardian is needed and appoints Brazos Bend Guardianship Services as the guardian of the person of the proposed ward. Bond set at $10.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. Anything further for the record, Ms. Cope?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Harvey?
No, Your Honor.
All right. The order will be signed shortly. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
May we be excused?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes